Hi there and welcome to this video where I am going to explain how the custom stop loss function works in the Freqtrade bot. With this custom stop loss function, you can define an extra level of exit signals to your strategy next to the already present stop loss function, trailing stop loss function, the ROI function and the strategy sell function. This video is going to be a bit technical and you should have some basic Python knowledge to understand how the code works. I will try to not turn this video into a Python coding session and try to keep it high level, but it's inevitable to not show you some code at some point in time. Nonetheless, I will use a lot of already typed examples from the Freqtrade site and have prepared all other specific code in advance, so you will not see me typing the whole time. I will also leave some specific examples and some additional information on my blog as a reference later on, so read the description of this video to find the other links to that code. Now let's begin with explaining a little bit how the default stop loss function works and what my biggest critique is of this implemented type of stop loss. Freqtrade bases its default stop loss function on a percentage that deviates from the original buy price. There is no way that you can set this to an absolute price level at this stage. You can see this clearly in the default stop loss settings you have to set in each strategy you use. On this slide you can see that the stop loss is set to -5% from the entry price after the strategy has given a buy signal. So when the price of an asset is, let's say, $1000, the bot's default stop loss kicks in after a 5% loss, so the asset has a price of $950 at that time. Now 5% does not seem much, but when an asset can move more than 10% a day at any given day, then this 5% becomes a liability, because you can get stopped out of a lot of trades because you do not have enough breathing room defined. A greater stop means more breathing room for a trade, and therefore you wouldn't be getting stopped out often. But when a large enough drop occurs, your losses are quite substantial though. Here in this example you can clearly see that a 15% stop loss can be very beneficial, and the trade can breathe enough so to wait for the next pump to arrive. Now this could be a good strategy setup in a sideways or bull market, but in a bearish market where huge 15% drops can happen more than you would like, and if your strategy does not consider these bearish periods, a few 15% losses can be more devastating to your portfolio than these 5% drops. In these periods your trading balance suffers because of the stop loss settings, and this becomes a problem with the Freqtrade bot and the strategy that only performs well under bullish circumstances. And maybe now you could think that the built-in custom stop loss could be an answer to this problem, because you are not dependent on percentages of the buy price and such. But then I have to disappoint you a little bit, because the stop loss function is also a percentage-based function. The only major difference is that it calculates the stop loss distance from the current price and not from the opening price as far as I know. So if the custom stop loss is dependent on the current price and this price is moving up, then so does this custom stop loss. In other words, this custom stop loss function acts like a trailing stop loss, and most of the examples given by the Freqtrade documentation also explain them as a form of stop loss that moves up with the current price. Also, a custom stop loss is always upward moving but never down. So if the price goes down, the highest calculated stop loss level remains, and newer calculated lower stop loss levels will be ignored. This is also according to the documentation, by the way. In other words, I did not find a way to create a setup that calculates an absolute stop loss and an absolute target price to create a strategy that is dependent on a risk to reward setup, like shown in this picture. For example, here I have a strategy that has a stop loss that is calculated as the entry candle's lowest low plus 10 pips below that, and the exit signal is 1.5 times greater than the risk taken. In Freqtrade this setup is not possible, and maybe I will find one later on, but at this moment the functionalities of Freqtrade does not consist of these. But maybe there is a viewer that can help us by commenting below and pointing us to some information or code that we can use to make this kind of setup. Anyway, this is not to say that this custom stop loss function is totally useless at the moment, as we will go over some examples. For now, let me first explain you the workings of the Freqtrade custom stop loss functions and explain the ways you can use this in your trading strategy. Let's first walk through the documentation and see what we can learn. The first thing you have to know is that the custom stop loss function is activated by using the use custom stop loss equals true within your strategy. Then you actually have to define the custom stop loss function itself, and from that moment on, every Freqtrade iteration the bot will calculate the stop loss from the current price. If you followed my video on the Freqtrade configuration, bot and exchange settings, you should know that the default Freqtrade bot process runs every 5 seconds. So every time this process runs, this custom stop loss is calculated. And of course you can change these settings in the bot's configuration file. You can also read over here that the custom stop loss price can only move upwards, so this acts as a trailing stop loss as I said before. And the default initial percentage-based stop loss acts like the lowest boundary for a trade, as you can read over here. And over here you can see that the stop loss value is a percentage of the current price and not an absolute price value based on the open value of the trade. And it does not matter if there's a positive or negative floating number, it will always be calculated as a positive percentage against the current price. Here you see the first example which is presented on the Freqtrade site. I've copied only the actual code here and not the comments that are given on the Freqtrade site. This strategy is very simple. If the Bitcoin price on the daily time frame crosses above the SMA 50, then a buy signal is given. And when it crosses below, a sell signal will be given. Also, the default stop loss distance is 5% from the entry price. Now let's start to backtest this strategy first without the custom stop loss and then with the custom stop loss and see what the results are and what you can see in the backtest output. In this backtest where custom stop loss is disabled, you can see that there are only buys and sells caused by the strategy and the stop loss of course. And you can see over here that the strategy caused a drawdown of 55% during the last bear market. And here you can see the chart of this strategy with its buy and sell moments. You can see that there are not many buy or sell moments and the strategy is relatively stable. Only when the price goes sideways the strategy has many buy and sell moments. The initial 5% stop loss only gets activated when the price goes down after the initial buy of the asset. Now let's do this backtest again with the custom stop loss and see what will be different. And by the way, this is not a test between these strategies to determine which is the best one, only to show you the differences. Now you can see that there's an extra line in the sell region stats, which says that there are trailing stop losses involved. These trailing stop losses caused the bot to sell when a 4% price retracement occurred after the last determined current price. And with an asset that can move up or down more than 4% a day, this could lead up to a lot of trades and a lot of loss of potential profit. Also, because each sell will cause an additional buy, as long as the close price is above the SMA 50, there will be new stop losses and custom trailing stop losses set with each new trade. And by doing this, a perpetual loop of sells and buys occurs, as long as the strategy condition is met and each time the price retraces 4% during that trade. And you can see this very clear on the chart. An extreme amount of trades happening during this backtest period because these price retracements to the trailing stop loss points. But again, this is just an example on how this custom stop loss function works and not a test on how well the strategy works. But hopefully you can now see the difference between the use of Freqtrade's default stop loss and the additional custom stop loss function. Now fortunately this is not all doom and gloom and you can use this feature in more than one way. So now let's see in which other ways we can use this custom stop loss function in the strategy. Oh yeah, and before I mention these other custom stop loss methods and before I forget to mention this, you should be aware that because this custom stop loss acts as a trailing stop loss, you should not confuse this with the other way the Freqtrade bot has implemented a trailing stop loss function and that you can program into your strategy. I will not explain the difference here because I already did that in one of my earlier videos, but just be aware of this and keep the difference in mind when developing a strategy. Now the Freqtrade site has the following custom stop loss examples for us. The trailing percentages, which I already discussed a couple of minutes ago, the time-based trailing stop loss, a different stop loss per pair, and a trailing stop loss with a positive offset. Also a stepped stop loss is possible, and also you can use a custom indicator to define your own custom stop losses. Also, there are some helper functions that can help you create a stop loss that is relative to the open price, or a stop loss that can be specified using an absolute price level. But in all cases you have to keep in mind that these are still calculated relatively from the current price and are all percentage based. But enough talk now, let's move on with the second example, which is the time-based stop loss. And as the name implies, this custom stop loss function can be fit with a time-based component to determine after which time a certain action has to be executed. In this specific example given by the Freqtrade site, there's a calculation made between the current time and the time the trade was opened. You have to read this code backwards to understand its working, and maybe it's a little bit counterintuitive, but bear with me. The initial setting of this custom stop loss is 100%, which is defined by the return is one statement here. So actually this return 1 states that the original strategy stop loss of -50% should be respected, and after the first time delta has passed, then the stop loss level should change. Then there is a calculation between the current time of the Freqtrade process cycle and the time the trade was opened. If the difference or time delta between these times is bigger than 60 minutes, then the first stop loss will be changed to 10% below the current price. And finally, after 2 hours when the change was opened, this function changes the stop loss to 5% below the current price. So again, this strategy opens with a 15% stop loss, then after 60 minutes it changes the stop loss to 10%, and then after 120 minutes it changes the stop loss to 5%. And that's basically it. Now the third example given by the Freqtrade site is the way you can give different stop loss settings to different pairs. This could be a quite ingenious move, because each crypto trading pair has its own dynamic, and sometimes when a coin has a much higher trading range during a trade than your default strategy stop loss, then this could lead to trades that are unnecessarily stopped because of this. With this custom stop loss function, you actually determine the trading pair and the stop loss what the pair should get during a trade. And to use this example over here, you see that the default stop loss for the strategy is 25% below the price when the trade was opened. If at some point a specific customized pair has an open trade, it gets a custom trailing stop loss from this function. Here you can see in this function that Ethereum and XRP have a much longer distance or width with a stop loss price than Litecoin. So apparently Ethereum and XRP have a higher dynamic price range than Litecoin, which has a lesser average true range during a trade. The fourth example of using a trailing stop loss is by using a positive offset from the buy price. Now, what does this mean? In this case, the custom stop loss gets activated if the profit of a trade exceeds 4%, which is determined over here. If this is true, then there is a calculation made which divides the current profit by 2, and this variable is called the desired stop loss. The final return statement calculated the definitive stop loss by using the max and min functions in Python. So if the profit is higher than 4%, then the stop loss will be set within a range of 2.5 and 5%, or the desired stop loss. The stepped stop loss is another way of using stop loss levels during a trade. In this method, the amount of current profit determines the stop loss level that will be set relative to the price of the trade opened. And as in all the earlier examples, the first stop loss setting is the default stop loss, and in this example it is set to 50% below the price the trade opened on. The final return statement has been set to 100% because of the one configured, so this stop loss function will respect the default stop loss of the strategy. Then there are some if-then statements, where will be determined on which level the new custom stop loss level will be set after the current profit has reached a certain target. Here we have to read the statement from the last line to the first line to understand what's going on. This line states that if the current profit is bigger than 20% from the open price, then the new stop loss level must be set to 7% above the open price. So you have to calculate the open price plus 7% of it to determine the new stop loss price level. And in other words, if the open price of the trade was $1,000, then the new stop loss level is $1,070. Then when the current profit hits a difference of 25%, then the stop loss level increases to 15% of the opening price. So here it will be set to a stop loss level of $1,150. And remember that stop loss levels can only go up and never down. The final statement calculates that if the profit gets to 40%, then the final stop loss level will be set to 25% above the opening price. So a current price of 40% of $1,000, which is $1,400, will set the last stop loss level to $1,250. And that's basically the whole principle of this setup. The last example of using a custom stop loss is the use of an indicator to determine the sell level of a stop loss. In this first small section, the function will be provided with the data frame information to calculate the indicator that determines the stop loss level. Here, the Freqtrade data provider is used to import the current data frame into this function. Then the last complete candle information is taken and inserted into a variable. Also in this line, the trade date is taken from the last candle and rounded to use in this function while backtesting. Then here the correct trade candle is selected and the check is executed to see if it's not empty. And if everything is correct, the indicator is calculated, which determines the stop loss level, which in this case is the parabolic SAR. In the final stages, the function will calculate if the stop loss price is higher or lower than the current price. And if this is the case, then the difference will be calculated from absolute price levels into relative price levels, which with this function can work with. And as long as the current price is higher than the SAR price level, there will be a new custom stop loss level calculated, which can only move upward. If this situation changes and the current price moves below the stop loss price, then the stop loss level gets hit and the bot will sell the position. Now, there are also some other common helpers to calculate a certain stop loss level, and you probably saw them passing by in the last couple of examples. The first helper function I will show you is the stop loss from open helper. This function helps to determine the stop loss level relative to the open price instead of the current price. However, this will still be a calculation between the current rate or price and the current profit percentage, and it will return a value that is relative to the current rate. Remember this. I do not exactly know how this function is programmed, but I think it does the following calculation. First, calculate the open price plus the required stop loss in an absolute price. Next, calculate the difference between the stop loss price and the current price. Then calculate the percentage this difference is over the current price. And finally, return the difference as the value to set the stop loss. So in a way, this function actually calculates the return value from the current rate instead of the open value. So you still get the same result as all the other functions that I explained earlier. Now the second helper function is the stop loss from absolute price. And again, this is another calculation and another trailing stop loss method. This time between the current rate and an absolute value that is calculated by means of using the ATR indicator. First of all, the ATR is calculated in the data frame, and this information becomes available for making calculations later on. Then you see here again that the current data frame is loaded into the custom stop loss function and that the previous candle is used for the backtrade function. And finally, the function returns the stop loss value that is calculated by using the multiplied ATR value, which is subtracted from the current rate of price. Then this value is calculated as the stop loss value percentage against the current rate. And here you can see the calculation the function makes. Again, it comes down to the calculation of the percentage against the current rate. And again, this is a trailing stop loss which moves up with the current price and ATR value and never goes down. Now, you may question yourself, how do I find this current profit value, open value, current price, current profit, and all those other values you use in these functions? Well, the last thing I want to show you before I end this video is that I have created a specific strategy file that shows you all the variables that are available in the custom stop loss function. For this, I have added a long list of variables that the custom stop loss function internally uses and will print it out on your screen. This way you can determine what information you want to use for programming your own stop loss level. So if you do a backtest and use this specific piece of code, you can see all the available variables and their output. If you have some coding skills and have an idea on how to create your own custom stop loss, then maybe you can use these variables to actually realize your own trailing exit signal. You also see that if I walk through the output, you can even get a complete data frame that is imported with the Freqtrade data provider function. And also remember that each candle and trade information is calculated on that specific day in time during a trade. Non-trade candles will not be shown here, but other candle information will be calculated with the default strategy data frame. So let's wrap this video up, because I think I have given you all the information I have found on the Freqtrade site. So if you like the contents of this video and you think it was worth your time, then please click on the like button to let me know. Also, please subscribe to my channel and click on the notification bell to get updated on new videos. This will also help the YouTube algorithm. and I hope to see you in my next video. Goodbye!